Did you know that you have been using the subjunctive since the beginning of your Spanish journey? Let's talk about it. Hola mis amores, ¿cómo están? ¿Qué tal? Yo soy Paula de Speak Spanish with Paula. Si eres nuevo en el canal, bienvenido. Considera suscribirte, darle a la campanita de notificaciones y también puedes seguirme por Instagram y así podemos interactuar un poquito más. Today's video is going to be in English because we're talking about the subjunctive and I want you to focus on the topic rather to trying to get and translate what I'm saying, okay? We are going to see the difference between the indicative and the subjunctive. You really need to get down the differences, okay? Then we're going to move on to the elements that are present in a subjunctive sentence. And finally, we're going to learn how to conjugate the verbs in the present of the subjunctive. ¿Estás listo? Empecemos. First, we need to get the difference between a mood and a verb tense. Why? Because the subjunctive is not a verb tense, but a mood. Okay? So, a grammatical mood reflects the speaker's attitude towards a statement. Okay? And in Spanish, we have three moods: the indicative, the imperative, and the subjunctive. By the other hand, a grammatical tense, a verb tense, refers to when the action takes place, okay? Present, past, future. Three tenses, three moods. So the mood is the attitude, and the tense is when the action takes place. Now let's take a look to the difference between the indicative and the subjunctive. The indicative is used to present objective facts, things that are happening, will happen, or already happened, okay? So to talk about things that are objective, certain, and this includes facts, descriptions, or scheduled events. Now, the subjunctive is used to talk about things that are subjective, okay? Things that are possible to happen, but not certain. This includes things like doubts, wishes, recommendations, and even opinions about the likelihood of other events occurring. For instance, when you give a recommendation or advice, or you want someone else to do something, you don't know if they're going to do it, if they're going to follow your advice. You hope they do, but the outcome is not certain. At the end of the day, they have the option to do it or not. So it is possible to happen, but not certain. Same happen with doubts. You are not sure about it. Might be true or not. So there's an uncertainty around it. Let's see some examples to figure out the differences between the indicative and the subjunctive. If I say, Alfonso estudia español. Alfonso estudia español. It is indicative. Why? Listen carefully. From the speaker's point of view, the idea that Alfonso studies Spanish is a fact. From the speaker's point of view. Now, if I say, es posible que Alfonso estudie español. Es posible que Alfonso estudie español. Subjunctive. Why? From the speaker's point of view, the idea that Alfonso studies Spanish, it's possible, could be true or not. So there's an uncertainty around it. What about if I say, estoy segura que Alfonso estudia español? Estoy segura que Alfonso estudia español. It's indicative. Why? From the speaker point of view, there's no doubt that Alfonso studies Spanish. No doubt about it. But if I say, dudo que Alfonso estudie español, dudo que Alfonso estudie español, it is subjunctive. Why? Because from the speaker's point of view, there's doubt about it. There's doubt that Alfonso studies Spanish, okay? Listen, you could say something really crazy that everyone knows that is not true, but if you present it as a true, as a fact, from your point of view, you use the indicative. Let me give you an example. Estoy segura que los perros pueden volar. Sí, estoy segura que los perros pueden volar. We all know it's not true, right? But I don't care about the universal truth. I'm just saying that I'm really sure that the dogs can fly, okay? That's my truth. From my point of view, that's a fact. And you might say, Paula, yo no creo que los perros puedan volar. Yo no creo que los perros puedan volar. That's subjunctive because there's doubt in the statement, okay? So the indicative expresses something that you believe is a fact, it is true, no matter what. The subjunctive is something for the hypothetical situations, doubts, wishes, when you give a recommendation and you don't know if they're going to follow it or not, okay? When you want someone to do something, but the outcome is uncertain to you, all right? That's when we use the subjunctive. One more thing to keep in mind is that the subjunctive cannot exist alone, okay? Other elements has to be present in the sentence, in the statement. See? Basically, 3 elements. Number 1, 2 subjects. Most of the subjunctive sentences have 2 subjects, one in the main clause and another in the secondary clause, okay? The attitude of the subject in the main clause is what triggers the use of the subjunctive in the secondary clause. Let's see. Yo quiero que tú cocines la cena esta noche. Yo quiero something to happen, okay? But I know that it's going to happen. I'm unsure that it's going to happen. I don't know. Could happen or not. Okay? That's why it's subjunctive. Yo, the first subject. Quiero, it's a verb that triggers the subjunctive. Que tú, second subject. Okay? Do something. In this case, cocines la cena mañana. And I'm saying most of the subjunctive sentences because there are cases where we only use one subject. Okay? For instance, yo dudo que yo pueda ir a la fiesta. Yo dudo que pueda ir a la fiesta. It's the same subject, okay? But don't worry about it. We're going to see all the multiple uses in future lessons. The second element is a relative pronoun, and the most common one is que, okay? What it does is to join the 2 sentences, the 2 ideas, the 2 statements, okay? Yo quiero que tú cocines la cena mañana. Yo quiero que tú cocines la cena mañana. And basically, we use the relative pronoun to join the 2 sentences because in Spanish, we cannot have 2 conjugated verbs together, okay? So we cannot say, yo quiero cocines la cena mañana. Quiero cocines, it's not possible, okay? And finally, 2 verbs. One in the indicative that goes in the main clause and the other one in the subjunctive, in the secondary clause. Yo quiero que tú cocines la cena mañana. Querer, which is a verb that triggers the use of the subjunctive, and cocinar. Yo quiero que tú cocines la cena mañana. The key thing to remember is that the verb in the indicative has to trigger the use of the subjunctive, okay? And how do you know the verbs that trigger the use of the subjunctive? Well, you could use the acronym WEIRDO to categorize the verbs that trigger the use of the subjunctive. And remember, these weirdo verbs go in the indicative. The second verb on the secondary clause is the one that goes in the subjunctive, okay? Keep in mind that. Weirdo stands for wishes, emotions, impersonal expressions, recommendations, doubts, and our magic word, ojalá. I'm making a video for each one of these weirdo categories in the future lessons, okay? But the idea of today's video is for you to get the difference between the indicative and the subjunctive and to learn how to conjugate the subjunctive in the present, okay? So let's take a look to the conjugation. To conjugate regular verbs in the present of the subjunctive, we follow 3 simple steps. Number 1, conjugate the verb in the yo form of the present indicative. This is a crucial step, okay? So if we have hablar, comer, vivir, you conjugate it in the yo form of the present indicative. Hablo, como, vivo. Then number 2, we're going to drop the final O in the conjugation, okay? And finally add the following endings, depending on if the verb is AR, ER, or IR. So for the AR verbs, we have es, hemos, eis, en. Notice that for the yo form and él, ella, usted form, they share the same ending, e, okay? And then the ER and IR verbs share the same stuff. So we have a, as, a, amos, ais, an. And here again, the yo form and the él, ella, usted form share the same ending. Let's take the verb cocinar. We conjugate it in the yo form of the present indicative, and we have cocino. Then we drop the final O and we look for the ending according to the subject we are using. If I want to say you cook, would be cocines, cocines, okay? And one more time, we have our example. Yo quiero que tú cocines la cena mañana. Yo quiero que tú cocines la cena mañana. I highly recommend you to conjugate the verb in the yo form of the present indicative as the first step. Why? Because if the verb has a spelling change in the yo form of the present indicative, it will have it in the present of the subjunctive, not only for the yo form, but for all the subjects, even nosotros and vosotros. For instance, the verb poner, when I conjugate it for the yo form in the present indicative, it is pongo, okay? We drop the final O and we conjugate it depending on the subject we want to use. For instance, tú pongas, or nosotros pongamos, okay? So that change in spelling is going to be present in all the subjects. That's why it's really important for you to conjugate the verb in the yo form of the present indicative, okay? So you could say in the subjunctive, quiero que pongas atención. Quiero que pongas atención. Another one, the verb hacer. Hago would be the yo form in the present indicative. Then we drop the final O, and for instance, I could say hagan for ellos, ellas, ustedes. Hagan, okay? For instance, quiero que hagan la tarea. Quiero que hagan la tarea. So that works for the go verbs and even for the steam changing verbs. For instance, the verb pedir. I conjugate it in the yo form of the present indicative and I have pido. So notice that the E in the verb pedir changes to an I. pido. Then we drop the final O and you conjugate it for all the subjects in the present of subjunctive. For example, for él, ella, usted would be pida, pida. Por ejemplo, él no quiere que ella le pida dinero. Él no quiere que ella le pida dinero. One more, the verb conducir, to drive, conducir. We have conduzco in the present indicative for the yo form, conduzco. Then you drop the O, so you could say conduzcas for tú in the present of subjunctive, okay? For instance, no quiero que conduzcas rápido. No quiero que conduzcas rápido. By the way, at the beginning of the video, I was saying that you've been using the subjunctive since the beginning of your Spanish journey. Why? Look this. Que tengas un buen día. Que tengas un buen día. When you were learning how to say have a good day, this is the expression. Que tengas un buen día. So tengas is in the present of the subjunctive. And why subjunctive? Well, because I wish you to have a good day. But I don't know the outcome. At the end of the day, I don't know if you're going to have a good day or a bad one, okay? I wish you have a good day. But the outcome, the result, is uncertain. That's why we use the subjunctive. And of course, we have irregular verbs. But don't worry, there are only 6 irregular verbs. They are dar, ir, saber, haber, estar, y ser. If you look closely, they form the verb dishes. So it might be helpful for you to remember the 6 irregular verbs in the present of the subjunctive. Dishes: dar, ir, saber, haber, estar, y ser. So as I said, the idea of today's video was for you to get down the difference between the indicative and the subjunctive, okay? And I hope you did. I hope you got it, all right? In the future lessons, in the next videos, I'm going to break down the multiple uses of the different categories where we use the subjunctive, all right? Don't be scared, don't worry, it's just another step on your Spanish journey. Eso es todo por hoy, mis amores. Yo espero que les haya gustado el video, que pongan en práctica las diferencias entre el indicativo y el subjuntivo. Y si tienen alguna pregunta, déjenmela en los comentarios. Yo les mando un beso enorme, cuídense y nos vemos en el próximo video. ¡Chao!